Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics. We get started each week by introducing my two co-hosts, which I will bring up now. We have Ruben Bressler.
Hello.
We have Aaron Campbell.
Hey.
We missed a week. We weren't here last week. I was doing a set review thing. Ruben, you were doing the World Series of Poker thing. Aaron, you were being fabulous. And, it's hard work. It's a full-timer.
It is.
Full-time job.
Much more difficult than anything either of us were doing.
Absolutely. So, we begin each week with the first pick. As you see, guys, on the screen, we're going to talk first about the changing drawing extra cards rule. The first time, at least, and as I can remember, that they have ever done anything to the drawing extra cards rule, period. Yeah. Which is if you accidentally draw extra cards, your opponent looks at your hand, chooses any one of those cards to shuffle back in. So, first, there is the change in and of itself. Now, what I would say is that between judges now being able to watch replays at Pro Tours and World Championships, having a judge literally watch the stream all the time on Pro Tours and World Championships, whose job is sit here, watch the broadcast, and find play errors. Mm-hmm. And then they have changed what happens when you draw extra cards. The Chapin thing at Pro Tour Fate Reforged kind of made some serious waves. Those were all things that, had they been in place, that would have been an entirely different scenario as to what would have happened in front of 18,000 people or whatever it was at the time. Yeah. That was a big thing. And I think that was a very monumental thing that people focused on. A lot of people just took that away from the Pro Tour, and that was really all they kind of took from it. And it was this huge controversy and yada yada. And as a result, we have some incredibly huge changes. So as a result, you have this rule about your opponent gets to essentially Thoughtseize you. And somebody joked, I thought was pretty cool. They're taking Thoughtseize out of standard and they're adding into the IPG, Because, and this also relies on your opponent to know what the best card in your hand is. Some of the people that were talking about it, I saw, they said, well, if your opponent picks the wrong card and you drew the extra card that they didn't pick or whatever that you needed and they just picked poorly, well, then you just kind of made out there. So there is some concerns that people are going to try to abuse it. Of course, they do track warnings and they do pay attention to people who do this stuff intentionally. Another caveat to this rule that changed was that it doesn't help with certain reveals. Like, for example, if you picked up 8 cards with Dig Through Time, you're still in trouble.
Yeah.
And this doesn't really do anything against that or to fight that or to solve that. But the idea that because I drew an extra card, I don't just auto-lose. I don't just auto-scoop up my cards and say GG because I drew 4 off Brainstorm or whatever. I really appreciate that. One of the things, and best I can tell, there's no problem with this. One of the things is if this happens to you, I drew an extra card. Oops, my bad. You can shuffle your hand before you show your opponent. What I mean? I think that's actually kind of a thing. I know it's a small thing, it's a small edge, but when we're talking about the tippity top of competitive Magic, if I can shuffle my hand and you had no idea what I was looking at for the past X turns or whatever, that's kind of a big deal. Well, at least, not kind of a big deal, but it's kind of a cool thing. It's an edge. It's a thing. So, Ruben, how do you feel about sort of what they did to drawing extra cards?
Well, it's super weird. I was certainly not expecting it to happen. This is not something that the players have been complaining about. And usually it takes some angry folks on social media or on the blogs or in some articles before something like this gets this level of attention. In this case, they're preempting that, I think. I don't think that this is that big of a thing on most people's radars right now. But kudos to the judges and to the staff of who make the rules for preempting anything more from occurring, and they're trying something different.
Mm-hmm.
They redid the mulligan with the scry, and they kept going down that rabbit hole, and we're like, well, how can we make the game better? And they're going to give this a shot. I don't hate it. Thoughtseize is one of the hardest cards in the game to play because you can pick the wrong card. And you can also, by the way, you get to pick a card from their hand.
Correct.
A non-land card like Thoughtseize.
It's true.
So this is even harder than a Thoughtseize if you're presented with this situation in a lot of cases.
Right.
Now they're dropping it down to a warning, which I'm always in favor of, and they're also letting the opponent do their own fix to it and trying to rebuild quote unquote rebuild the old game state.
Sure.
Which is, typically they've gone back on trying to do in-game fixes, but this is a situation in which I think that they're going to give it a shot and try to let the players play. Which I think a lot of people have a problem with the judges, that at some point in a ruling, the game stops being about the game and starts being about the rule, and that sucks for a lot of people. And they're just trying to avoid that from happening in the future. I think this is a sweet change. I'm excited to see how it works. Because obviously we've never seen it in practice yet. So once we see it get in some competitive play, once it happens on camera, it's going to be awesome to see how the players react, how the judges react, and how the audience reacts. I'm really looking forward to watching this play out.
Sure. So before we talk to Aaron real fast, there was this, like the actual bit that you were talking about. This is from Toby Elliott's blog, where he talks about the Magic Origins policy changes. He says some people see this as a philosophy change because we have traditionally shunned in-game fixes, and that's not quite the case. What we want to avoid is penalties that have unpredictable in-game impact. For example, we could add a rule that said game rule violations come with a 2-life penalty. In some situations, that's completely irrelevant, and for others, it might as well be a game loss, and that sort of inconsistency should be avoided. So Aaron, how do you feel about the idea that all of a sudden you're able to, coercion is a better card name to bring up, because coercion literally does that.
Isn't that a black card?
That is a black card.
It is a black card.
Now you do shuffle it in, coercion makes you discard it, but you understand what I'm saying. Either way, how do you feel that this rule is going to impact Magic moving forward?
Ruben said something very interesting. You said, you worry about the game being more about the rules than the game itself. And I'm somebody where I like rules a lot. And, I am somebody who, I try really, really hard to, I call out my triggers. I do all those things that I feel makes me a good player. Not a great player. Like, I'm not a Hall of Famer or anything. But, I'd like to think that even though I'm not very... Right. Give me time. But what I'm saying though is when I play a game of Magic though, and I look back at that game, I'd like to feel that I displayed my graveyard correctly, I dredged correctly, I was good communication with my opponent. All those things that I feel like I do. I do those things because it behooves me to do them, and in a way it's sort of the rules. So when I hear people say, well, the rules should not, word I'm looking for, like maybe supersede the game. I'm not sure how I feel about that, because the few judges I've talked to about this, they worry that this is going to set a precedent. Like they agree that a game loss is too extreme, but that this might be a little too lenient, and that people are going to maybe get comfortable with this, or maybe they're not going to be as careful when they pick their sleeves, and let's say they're really sticky sleeves. Don't use those sleeves then, because if you do draw that extra card, I understand where they're coming from, where it's, as somebody who likes rules, and I
love rules. Rules are great. I've been a soccer referee, or used to be a soccer referee for a long time. But as a soccer referee, you don't want to be the center of attention. You want to have the fans go home not remembering you, right? You don't want to go to a Magic tournament and have the highlight reel of your day feature a judge. You don't want the story to be, you'll never guess what happened in round 4. I had to appeal to the head judge, and then he overturned the other guy, and I lost the game because of it. Right. Nobody wants that. This hopefully will lessen those stories. It'll lessen the sheer number of those stories, just because a lot of people, are going to be like, I was 6-1, had a shot at top 8. I accidentally drew an extra card, got a game loss, and I got knocked out because of it.
Right, those are huge feel bads. Like those are,
and that's
those
a
are
huge swing. Now they can be like, I drew an extra card and I put myself way behind, but I still had a shot, and then the game ended actually when one of us outplayed the other one.
But like I said,
that's a lot better of a story.
But I just worry that that's going to be justification or an excuse for people to be sloppier, or to not play as tight as they should be. And I'm not saying a game loss is right, but I think if we were to use like a gauge or some sort of, game losses all the way over here, and what they're proposing now, I think there might be something maybe a little higher up the gauge, or you're looking at a gas tank kind of thing. I think maybe we could slide the needle a little back. I just think this is too far back.
Well, I mean, I don't think anything is going to be sort of perfect, but I certainly know know, the sort of draconian, like you know, your sleeve went into a micromillimeter next to this sleeve, and because they touched right there, game lost. I mean, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
it's really a little absurd that, you know, if these two physical objects in time touch each other, you're done. And game's over, shuffle up or whatever. You lost the match if it's game 3. Hope you had fun playing Magic today. Like, you know, there's no real perfect fix for that, but that is pretty hardcore. And it can just ruin people's days.
Yeah, I certainly like that they're experimenting.
Sure.
That they're trying new things. And trying to make it better. You know, we're talking a little bit about this, like the old rule was so perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yep, drawing an extra card, you just shouldn't do it. Just don't do it. But we're human. We draw extra cards by accident. Our sleeves get sticky. We lose our concentration. We're tired, or we forget what brainstorm does, or whatever. And you know, we all make mistakes, and we've all gotten a game. Well, everybody at this point, if you've been playing for any length of time, you've gotten a game loss for misregging a deck, and you've gotten a game loss for drawing extra cards. It's happened to everybody.
Right.
And now,
oh, come on,
might not. Yeah, I believe. I got.
Wow, of course.
I don't believe you for a second.
Look, there are entire huge judge threads on Facebook. I saw one where it was like this guy's playing an Atarka red deck, and I mean, you know, it's obviously mono red with a splash green for the Atarka's command. And someone, instead of putting Atarka's command, they put Atarka red. That was what they'd actually wrote on the paper. And there's this long judge thread of people who are just like, yeah, I'd have given him a game loss. Yeah, I'd have given him a game loss. And there's just like, dude, this guy was obviously thinking of Atarka's command. It was in his deck as a 4-of. It was the obvious deck list, and it's what it's supposed to be, essentially. And, you know, that's kind of a thing. I've gotten a game loss for deck reg problems. I've gotten a game loss for drawing extra cards. Like, it's just a thing that happens to you because Magic is not a perfect thing that's played always. Only if you could Magic Online all the time, or only if you could be Aaron Campbell, would you never make those mistakes.
No, in that particular case,
we
though,
can't all be perfect, Aaron.
God, Aaron, you're so good. We're just so not.
But in that
Miss
particular
Perfect. I forgot you never ever make a mistake.
We're terrible.
But in that particular case, though, I am leery about that particular case because, so let's say you fill out your deck list at home, okay, and you have time between the event and then your game, and then when you go to sit down for the player meeting, they even take time out of the player meeting to say, here's your minute to go over your deck list one more time and make sure everything is there. So you have. I think there's a difference between like a spur of the moment drawing the card.
Aaron. Sometimes I don't do everything great. I've been playing Magic for a decade or more, and I still forgot to put Beseju on my deck list at Grand Prix Richmond, and I started day 2 with a game loss. It still happens. So, but besides, let's get away from this because this is not the topic. And we'll talk about how I should be filling out my deck list errors more carefully in the future. We're talking about this ruling of drawing extra cards.
Sure.
And regardless of whether or not you've done it before, it's theoretically possible that you'll do it in the future. I'm certainly, you know, I've played Sensei's. I've played Sensei's Divining Top, where I draw a card in a phase where I usually don't draw a card. I've played Brainstorm. You know, you play cards that say draw a card on them all the time. You play Dredge, so you're not drawing cards, you're just sort of flipping them over. But you still might dredge by accident.
She's not even playing Magic at this point.
Whatever.
She's playing some weird sub game.
My point is that we're lessening the impact of something that is not really part of a game of Magic so much as it is a mechanic of a game of Magic.
Sure.
And I like that they're trying to allow us to play more.
All right.
That's all I want. I want to play more Magic, and removing this rule or altering this rule means we get to play more Magic.
So speaking of rules and the things that rule formats, and the formats are defined as this is what makes standard, this is what makes modern, this is what makes legacy, this is what makes vintage. One of the rules is the cards that you can play with, the banned and restricted list. Now, restricted only counts in vintage, much like other weirdo stuff for vintage, but for the ban list. The ban lists are a thing, are absolutely a thing in Modern, and there were no changes to the ban list for Legacy or Modern or Standard for that matter.
Spoilers!
Recently.
I was going to look that up. No.
Dude, we had no idea. And as a result of there being no changes, there was this huge uproar of like, how dare you let XYZ remain in the format? Why didn't you get rid of this? Why didn't you get rid of that? So I will start off saying that I feel 100% that there will be little to no modern changes, modern ban list changes, until right before the Pro Tour. And I tell you why. Because Modern, if you have the good Modern format that has everything banned how it's supposed to be, because like they should have banned Goryo's Vengeance or whatever it was, the problem is that if you go into that Pro Tour, it's going to be boring. It's going to be so boring because it's just going to be an expected metagame. If they had not banned Birthing Pod, it would have been a Birthing Pod Pro Tour. It would have been Birthing Pod versus Birthing Pod, like infinitely. And that is the most boring crap ever. When you shake it up and you ban things right before this big event, then that makes it exciting and that makes it interesting. And ultimately, I wish they had stuck to their guns and said, we're doing standard Pro Tours. You don't understand it right. We had not announced the 2-block structure standard rotation thing yet at the time when they did so, and there was that big uproar and whatever. And so now it's like, well, be careful what you wish for, guys, because you got your Modern Pro Tour, and as a result, you're only going to get a Modern ban list update once a year and right before the format changes. And otherwise, playing your Grand Prix, get over it. You know, if you don't like Goryo's Vengeance, well, fight it, because we're going to ban it right before the next Pro Tour, because that's just what we need to make that event more interesting. Aaron, tell me what you got. Other than just you just don't know. You just don't understand.
I think it's a disservice to the people who are playing the format regularly. Like, to say that there are people who feel like Wizards only cares about that format when it's Pro Tour time. And I understand what you're saying about making the Pro Tour more enjoyable from an entertainment standpoint. But there are people like me who are playing in these dailies. I'm playing 2 or 3 Legacy dailies a week right now. And when I was into Modern, I was playing that much Modern per week. So I was playing two Modern dailies a week. Plus I was going to Modern F&M, and if there was a 5K in the area, I was going to that too. So those of us who are playing in the trenches and have to deal with this format, not just because it's the format of the month or the year or whatever, we're having to deal with these decks that I feel, and it's always been my understanding that Modern has had that turn 4 rule, where if a deck is winning before turn 4, that's a bad deal, and they want to do something about that. Right. And I feel like Amulet and Grishelbrand are examples of decks that get there enough before turn 4 where it's a little worrisome, and it seems to violate that rule. So I think it's great from an entertainment standpoint, but for those of us who are playing this format 3-4 times a week, we have to live this and we have to deal with it. And I understand what you're saying about you can figure out the format, but I would argue that the culture that we live in right now, people just don't do that. People want their deck list fast. They want their innovation now. Nobody's really taking a deck and trying to do that, and people should be doing that. I'm not saying they're right for that though, but to say that we'll just go figure out the format, nobody's really doing that right now. So I can understand why people were disappointed and why they want more and why they feel like they should have gotten more. So
Ruben,
I'm sort of torn, because I agree that Modern isn't enough times a year relevant to the casual fan of Modern. You swoop in and play a Grand Prix and then leave, or you got the 5K in your area and then you leave. It's just people don't play it as much, and it doesn't have the built-in community that Legacy has, where everyone's like, if you have a Legacy community and there isn't a Legacy tournament in your area for a couple months, then someone will organize one at a local shop. Modern doesn't really have that yet. It doesn't have the cult following that Legacy has yet. It's getting there, but it's not quite where the Legacy the folks are. So I can appreciate that Wizards just wants it to roam free and see how it goes and stuff like that. But I can also appreciate that you want to have a couple fences put up and try to narrow it down so that it's not completely wild west out there before the next Grand Prix happens. I guess part of the problem is that there's the Pro Tour. I personally love that there's a Modern Pro Tour. I think that having 4 standard Pro Tours a year makes sense on some level, especially from an advertising standpoint, where Wizards just wants to sell cards. And when you're playing Modern, and the latest set that came out was, the next Zendikar expansion, and there's like 3 cards from that set being played at the Pro Tour, I can understand that that's a little bit weird. But I personally love watching Modern. I think that Modern is the Pro Tour where the older players that are coming back to Magic will probably be like, hey, I remember playing with Vengevine or whatever is popular at that Pro Tour. And they'll come back and be like, oh, Delver of Secrets. I have some great sit down on my knee and let me tell you about the Roaring 20s. That kind of thing where, so it might bring some folks back, whereas standard Pro Tours are trying to bring new folks in.
I think
bring old folks back, but specifically new folks.
Right. I mean, Wizards has stated many times that they don't test for Modern. They don't make cards that are specifically geared for any one format. They made Mental Misstep, and they just threw that thing out, and it just did what it did, and they had to go ban it and whatever because they're like, well, we don't know if it's actually going to do anything. And then first weekend, it was 4 of in like a Goblins deck, and it's
or
awful.
Delve. We're seeing that with Delve.
Or Delve. Yeah, exactly. So we're
anytime
banning Treasure
cost
Cruise.
reduction happens.
Yeah.
You dig through time, like girl.
It was a little absurd. So, and that's fine, but like again, the Pro Tour, and I hate to burst the bubble, is the promotional tour. It is not the professional tour. It is a promotional event for Magic the Gathering. It is supposed to get you excited about Magic. It's supposed to let you see the best in the world play the game that we love. That's an incredibly exciting, cool thing to do. They have literally changed the name of it to be the most recent set. It is Pro Tour Born of the Gods. It is Pro Tour Khans of Tarkir.
Yeah.
It is not Pro Tour, Philadelphia,
Modern, whatever year it is,
or whatever, Pro Tour Philadelphia, and hope that you remember that was the format. Pro Tour Nice or whatever, Pro Tour Paris. It doesn't matter because now you can remember clearly. Oh, Pro Tour Dragons of Tarkir was 2 weeks after Dragons of Tarkir. It should be featuring Dragons of Tarkir cards. Why? Because they want to promote the new set. They want people to get excited about it. They want to have enough cards that are good that you get to see in this big spectacle that they spend an absolute ton of money on. That you can see all the new cards do things, and when only 1 or 2 or maybe 3 make it to a Modern deck, that's just not a focus on the format anymore. And if they have to shake it up to make it interesting, then more power to them. I have no problem with it. Honestly, I just feel like I don't want to say that, like they don't care about Modern per se, but they just don't have time to test for it. They don't have time to make cards for it. And they did that change based on community feedback when the community didn't even understand what setup they were having. What setup, Wizard had in mind. Wizards had a plan, and they weren't able to show you all of it, but they had a plan. And without knowing that plan, I can understand the people being upset as a result. Aaron,
I still like having Modern as a Pro Tour, personally, but...
Yeah.
Aaron, you still want the Modern Pro Tour, yes?
Oh, absolutely. I was one of the people who pushed for it because I loved Modern before I discovered Legacy.
Oh, now at the time. Look, and there is this gentleman's agreement in Legacy. There is an entire gentleman's agreement in Legacy that we just don't ban Brainstorm, for real.
Yep.
Oh, that would cripple the format.
No, it wouldn't. It would still blue being the best friggin' thing that you could possibly do. It would still be the best color.
Yeah.
But for God's sake, Brainstorm is the most ban-worthy thing that has been around in Magic for God knows how long. And it's just one of those sacred cows, and they just won't kill it because if they kill Brainstorm in Legacy, they're going to destroy Legacy, and no one's going to want to play anymore because we can't play this really broken card that everyone agrees is stupidly broken and has pushed out all these other strategies because all these other strategies don't have one card that says draw 3 cards, use my fetch land, perfect Brainstorm.
But at the time, like you said, I did push for the Modern Pro Tour. I was disappointed that there wasn't one because at the time, and even though I'm not really playing Modern anymore, I love that other people are loving it. I love that there's this talk of, the format is now all these cards have spiked because people want to play, and I think that's fantastic. I'm not peeing in anybody's Cheerios because of that. So I do think it's great, and I just don't like seeing I think I would push for probably any format. I like seeing the variety. I like seeing limited players be tossed to bone, and I like seeing Modern players be tossed to bone, and I just think everybody should have a little bacon on their cheeseburgers. So
well, then why isn't there a Legacy Pro Tour? Why isn't there a Vintage
you.
Pro Tour? Right?
I would be so fine
Legacy,
with that.
The reason why there isn't a Legacy Pro Tour is because of card availability. That's the only reason.
Probably.
If they would reprint everything on the reserve list, which we will never get into this topic because this is a bag of cats that we can't get into. if let's say that WotC, for example, just provided everyone with cards at the Pro Tour, you could have a vintage Pro Tour if you wanted to, but it's card availability and whatever. But I think that modern is a good sweet spot where they can reprint stuff that they've printed in Modern before, in collector's sets and in dual decks and all that kind of stuff, that if suddenly a common or an uncommon becomes a $15 card that's in 4 different decks, then they can reprint it if they want to. Serum Visions is a good example of that. Remand, again, was another good example of that. These are cards that, spiked because there just aren't enough of them.
I am so glad I don't see that card in Legacy.
But I think that the specifically not banning or unbanning anything this time makes sense beyond simply that there isn't a Modern Pro Tour. You were talking about Goryo's Vengeance. It hasn't won a Grand Prix. It hasn't put 4 copies into a top 8. It's not dominating anything, right?
But it is violating
Amulet
that rule, though.
Well, okay.
I mean, when I went and looked at Modern results,
cannon.
I was, all right, so let's say it this way. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I was like, hey, Amulet Bloom is this really awesome combo deck in Modern. And he was like, oh, cool. He was like, what cards, are played in or whatever? Can you show me a deck list? And I actually had to look at like 4 or 5 results of IQs, Modern IQs, whether they're Premier IQs or Super IQs or whatever, to find an Amulet Bloom list. Yeah. Like, yes, it did well at that Pro Tour, but it's not played that much, and it's super hard to play. So if you like solving Rubik's Cubes all day, like, that is the deck for you. And I'm glad that it exists so you can have fun with it. And yes, it has the nut draws. And sure, sometimes it has the nut draws when you hide 7 cards and palm them.
Well, let's not get into the cheating discussion, but yeah, obviously it's the perfect deck if you're a scumbag cheat McGundy. But it's also just a great deck.
Sure, it is a really cool deck. It is fantastic design, and I applaud the guys who were able to make that deck and really show what it could do. But like, I don't know. I just think there's no perfect answer here, and Modern's a thing. Modern Masters is a thing. I certainly expect Modern Masters 2017, and that's going to be cool. But like, in terms of like why it should be a Pro Tour format, why it should be a promotional format, promotional tour format for the new set.
I completely agree with your point. The fact that my best defense for the Modern Pro Tour is I like it is not a good enough defense for it.
And I
completely agree with you on that.
I will freely admit that it gets really good ratings. People like to watch it. It gets very high ratings, and people enjoy it. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing for people to like to watch Magic, and people like to watch people play Modern at a very high level. That's great. I'm just saying, like, in terms of what Wizards is doing, why they have these events, and what they're supposed to accomplish, I don't know if that exactly does it, other than it made everybody happy.
But then why even have the format then? Like, at that point, it's like, if you're just gonna just put it down then. Like, no. I would rather it be put down than just get these little scraps from the table where it's
scraps from the table being like, it's on the Open Series, there's Grand Prix that are Modern, that those things don't go away. There's still 2 Legacy Grand Prix every year, even though Wizards has no obligation to support that format. Absolutely zero.
But compared to what Standard sees, though, it scraps. I mean,
sure, but like, at least you're getting them. At least you have 2 $35,000 events a year.
I don't think that's good enough.
Like, I mean, nothing's really perfect for those who like the things they like. In terms of like the ones that are already marginalized. I mean, let's be honest here. Like, they're just not. They don't get the pizzazz that Standard does. Why? There's a whole host of reasons. We already know all of them. Card availability, complexity, price of decks, things like that. I mean, like, you don't want to push things too hard in a world where you're saying, okay, here's this cool thing, but it's going to cost you $4,000 to play in it. That's a thing. But so when those things happen, when you have a GP New Jersey, when you have upcoming GP Seattle, those are legacy events. Those are super cool. People are super excited about them. Everybody wants to show up to them. Why? Because they want to show that they love this format, that they know that it only happens, a few times, that there's only so many Legacy Opens, there's only so many Legacy GPs, and by God, I'm going to make it a point to show up. Because when you stop showing up and you stop going to those big events that are of the format that you love, they will go away. I promise.
I just think that those things should be, what you're saying, though, is shouldn't that be an indicator that the formats should get more? Like, if these people are coming out for GP New Jersey, which they did in record numbers, and they're coming out, you would think, look what happened with Modern, where you guys didn't have your Modern Opens. It was all the Star City Opens were what, Standard or Legacy? Yeah. But then you saw that Modern was a thing and that it had an audience, and so
Sure.
you've got your Modern Opens, which SCG Baltimore, I was there for Modern, huge. You guys didn't expect the turnout that was there, and there's clearly an audience for this. So shouldn't that tell you that there should be more events, or that should, like it should kind of tell you something?
Well, I mean, of course, attendance always tells you what attendance can, and I can't speak to in terms of like what we're going to be doing in the future, but obviously those things are all paid attention to, and the idea that people are turning out and are making a point to make these events happen, to make them large and make them really exciting as a result, that's fantastic. That's great. That's the support that is necessary for these formats to continue moving forward and living. I mean, like that's why even if we have a standard open, there is the Legacy Premier IQ the next day. There's the Legacy Modern Premier IQ the next day. There's two $5,000 events for the format that you enjoy. Like, there was a time in which it was just like standard, like a standard 5K, the end. And maybe there were some legacy side events, and maybe there was, some vintage thing or whatever. But like nowadays we have these $5,000 events, $10,000 worth of stuff on Sunday that people can play in and enjoy. And I think that's fantastic.
I guess, like I said, to wrap it up, it's like, I would think that those things, like you said, you're not, there was talk of why is there a Modern Pro Tour. I think that seeing the attendance and seeing the interest and seeing the demand, that should explain why there's this Modern Pro Tour and why there is this demand for bannings to maybe balance out the format. I think that kind of answers the question, that there are people out there who want this.
It's possible.
A lot of people.
Right. And then the last thing I'll say on it is that I think Wizards has goals for the new set, what they want the new set to do, what they want people to think about the new set, and people to focus on. And I don't think a Modern Pro Tour does that in the best way, is the way I'd put it.
Sure.
So, anyway, let's keep moving. We're going to talk some Desperate Ravings. Desperate Ravings is when we're going to rave about things that happen in the Magic community this week. And by God, Terese Nielsen killed it. Just absolutely killed it. She printed two new Akroma, or she drew two new Akromas, the Angel of Wrath and help me out with the next one. Forgive me.
Fury.
Yes, Angel of Fury. And she did a fantastic job. So you guys talk about it. I'm going to find them. I'm going to get them on screen for you guys so you can take a look at them. Go ahead.
Yeah. So these are, first of all, Terese Nielsen's obviously great and just the best possible.
She's fantastic.
And everything that she's done, she had the Angel series already with Star City Games, and I imagine that a phone call is being placed to her voicemail pretty soon from the folks at Star City Games, of which we know some.
She's gonna have bacon on her cheeseburger.
These are just fabulous, and these were spoiled as part of the upcoming From the Vault Angels series.
Yes.
Which we don't know what else will be in, but we are for sure going to have the two Akromas in it. And these are really, really nice. I really like how her style has developed and specialized really over the years to create these really fantastic pieces. And these two in particular are just gorgeous. Especially Fury. Akroma Angel of Fury just is spectacular, I think. Angel of Wrath is fine, but the Angel of Fury is just where it's at as far as Magic art is concerned, from what I can tell.
Is it too? It's too far gone to say 2 turntables and a microphone, right? We're done, right? We're over that. We're done, right?
I'm just gonna hang up now.
We are finished.
In the vault for that one. Just Jesus.
But anyway, these are great. And where were these revealed at?
They were revealed. Yes, they were revealed at Comic-Con.
At Comic-Con. Okay. So, what was anything else really? Did we learn anything else at Comic-Con about the From the Vault Angels set, or anything else from Terese? Is this just going to be From the Vault Terese Nielsen? Does she just have 15 pieces of art in this set? That'd be hilarious. It'd be so good. But yeah, so we don't really know anything else about this set beyond the fact that Terese did these 2 pieces. The other 13 are sort of up in the air at this point.
That is correct. So thank you, Reddit, because they finally gave me the images I can download and show you guys now. I really appreciate that. I'm adding the first to the screen.
We did learn a couple things about the new Zendikar set. There was mention of Obnixilis being a major player.
Okay, good.
All right.
Because we're back in Landfall land.
Yeah, there were some tweets from the panel, and there's like pictures and then the Magic account. So there's an image of Obnixilis, the Unshackled, the original version. I think that's Unshackled, yeah?
Yep.
The Fallen, or is it the Fallen?
Obnixilis, I don't know.
Okay, but anyway, so it has a
Whichever one the
picture-
landfall one was.
Yeah, so it has a picture of the original one, and it says focusing the story also means tying up loose ends. Remember Ob Nixilis. And then there's an image of, Ob Nixilis trying to get off Zendikar.
I have become Akroma, by the way, in the meantime.
Yes, you have. So I have brought up here Akroma Angel of Wrath, Akroma Angel of Fury.
Aaron is Akroma Angel of Fury.
Yes, I am
now
between them.
Evan has two new co-hosts.
Yes, and they are amazing. And so, like, it is super cool. Like, granted, they did change Akroma's flavor text.
No rest, no mercy, no matter what.
Yes, I loved that flavor text. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. So, wrath is no vice when inflicted upon the deserving. I don't know. Maybe that just maybe that original flavor text just spoke to me far more. But if all the angels were, if this is just like from the vault, Terese Nielsen, I'm in. Terese is amazing. I know her personally. She's fantastic. We loved having her at different SCG events. Can't wait to have her back. And she does such incredible work, and she really killed it with these.
Now, was Akroma Angel of Wrath was in a previous duel deck? Yes.
Angels versus Demons, right?
Yeah, it was in Angels versus Demons.
Right.
So this is they probably changed the flavor text from that one also.
Right.
So my assumption is that it's just the reprinted flavor text, and both of the From the Vaults now have that flavor text.
Right.
As opposed to the original, which is fine.
I'm sorry. Divine versus Demonic.
Divine versus Demonic, not Angels versus Demons.
That is correct. Now, granted, that's when they changed it to this. Wrath is no vice when inflicted upon the deserving. However, the original Legion's rare, the time-shifted time spiral rare, no rest, no mercy, no matter what. That's badass.
And Akroma's Memorial has that flavor text as the tomb inscription.
Really?
It does. That's the flavor.
Yes. Oh my God! It totally does. That's so sweet.
A little bit of a Vorthos thing there for you.
I have to say, I appreciate the way that she drew them. Like, I feel like she, and maybe it's because she is a woman, but I really respect how they appear to be strong women. Like, the body proportions are right. You can see the musculature in their stomachs. Like, they're not, a lot of times you see like these tiny little waists and then maybe some donk, and like, it just looks like it looks real. Like, it looks like a real. Well, you know what I mean. How, like, you see but here it's like you can see the waist, and it's a thick, strong waist, and you've got like this could be a real person. This doesn't look exaggerated. She genuinely looks strong while still being feminine, and dare I say it, still sexy. This is somebody that you could believe being in battle. I'm just amazed at that, because there are so many ways that this could have gone poorly. Like, there are other artists who would have really crazy looking breasts and just crazy looking wrists, and just
we can talk about different Magic cards being different. Better Magic's been getting better at putting armor and musculature on females, and sort of more sexualizing males, actually, which is good. It balances the playing field a little bit. You get to have your
enthralling Victor.
To have your enthralling Victors and your heroes of Iroas.
Look, man.
Your Mr. Novembers, and like.
Winona Nelson called me up, and she was like,
alongside your Elspeths.
I need you
But I'm just saying, is I really
to.
appreciate the way that this was done. Like, you're seeing a strong fit. Like, just love it. And
yeah, just do it.
And that's a whole nother discussion to talk about.
Yeah, of course.
All that. But yeah, they've definitely been, along with several of our other discussions about, for example, Ashiok and Alicia and how they've been and Narset and attacking different facets of society. This is another thing that they've been doing with their art recently, and this is just another great example of it. And Terese is right at the center of it, giving us not just Barbies on our angels,
but real badasses.
But Ronda Rousey's on our angels.
I do want to bring up one more Vorthos thing, just to derail a little bit. So you'd mentioned the Vorthos thing. So in addition to these pictures, so they tweeted the Ob Nixilis pictures and hinting that Ob Nixilis really wants to get off Zendikar. There was also an image of Gideon with Kiora, and Kiora has Thassa's trident, and I'm just like, ooh, because clearly, you know how they were building up that cat fight between them,
Right.
and they finally settled it in the Uncharted Realms, and Kiora took her trident, and she apparently is bringing it to Zendikar to use in whatever battle is there. So I thought that was a neat little nod to- girl.
First of all, Bident.
Yes.
Bident
Bident.
Thassa, because there's only dubs.
Okay.
Only
Vice
dubs.
President of Kiora, Joe Biden.
Saw what you did there.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
But yeah.
But I thought that was just a neat little thing. 'Cause for somebody who might not have read the story, they're like, "Where'd she get the?" Oh.
Oh shit!
It's
So
so much
right. So I read Gideon's story today. I don't know if you guys got a chance.
Haven't.
But Gideon was getting his butt kicked by the Eldrazi. And it's weird. The story from the day was Gideon is on Zendikar, and then Gideon goes to Ravnica, and then Gideon's in Zendikar, and then Gideon goes to Ravnica. And on Zendikar, it's just like they're just getting destroyed. Like they're just getting annihilated. Eldrazi is just kicking everybody's butt. All these huge places, the Sea Gate that's supposed to be like the last bastion of civilization on Zendikar, it's just like, dude, they're just getting wrecked. It's getting unbelievably destroyed. So in the middle of that, he's going over to Ravnica, and there's this fight with goblins. Like Krinko, the mob boss, is fighting with the brothers, not the Slaughter brothers, something.
The Slaughterhouse
Shattergang.
Shattergang brothers. That's right. So they're fighting or whatever, and then he's going back to Zendikar, and oh my god, everything's dying. He's got to kill an Eldrazi, and then he goes back to Ravnica, and he went and he captured Krinko himself, and then he goes back to Zendikar, and there's this girl who's dying, and she's like, well, where is this like seer or whatever that you had? She's like, well, she died or she was lost or whatever, but she was figuring out the puzzle. She was figuring out some sort of secret, some sort of maze like type secret in I think it was in the secret in the runes or something, and then all of a sudden, Gideon's like, I know someone who solves puzzles and puts things together, and he's on Ravnica. And then they jump back over to Ravnica, and the Shattergang brothers are just like, you're gonna give us Krinko or we're gonna burn down the Boros Legion. And he's like, yeah, that's cool, but I'm gonna go talk to Jace, because Jace figured out the Dragon's Maze, and if Jace can figure out the Dragon's Maze, he can figure out what's going on Zendikar.
Yeah, he can figure out Spaghetti Monsters puzzles in no time.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, noodly appendages.
Awesome.
I got that. So I thought that was really cool. So
nice.
let's move on to the red zone. Let's talk about the Hall of Fame. The reason we have the title of the episode today being the kids in the Hall of Fame. There's a few different things to talk about. One is, I feel Ephro is the slam dunk this year. Ephro is just going to make it happen. I think he's really improved his sort of public image and persona and been a much more positive influence every time he's had the chance to be. Whenever things have not gone his way, he's tried to look at the good aspects of what's happening versus focusing on the negative ones, like he has in the past in some aspects. But otherwise, and I'm voting for him. I have a Hall of Fame vote. I haven't submitted it yet. I haven't even talked about it publicly. I've got one, and I wanted to talk about it here so we could kind of hash out who should be there, who should not, why should be there. And the other question that I want to talk about is, do people feel like we should are there too many people in the Hall of Fame? And that's the thing I want to talk about. So tell me a little bit, sort of like, Ruben, where you're at with the Hall of Fame people who are getting all the most chatter, and I'll kind of bring it back around to my thoughts at the end here.
If I had a vote, which I don't, but I do have the community vote, which is a brand new thing that they added this year, that if you're a member of, even if you're not a member of the Magic community, you accidentally stumble upon the voting page, you can vote for people who you believe should be in the Magic Hall of Fame. And there's a list of about 50 people who are eligible, and you can vote for them. And there's a lot of names on there that are probably at least partially deserving of some attention, and if they add a few more results, are probably all deserving of some attention in the future. But in my opinion, there are two names that jump off of the ballot for me this year, and if I had a ballot, I would be voting for two people. The first one is Eric Froelich, for all of the reasons that most everyone in the community is voting for Eric Froelich. He is not only a spectacular Magic player with the requisite results that you need, he's also a spectacular addition in several in recent years, particularly in the formation of Team Channel Fireball, has become a center of the competitive community, and in recent, even just this year, as part of the Constructed Resources podcast and his commentary work and his work on the VSL and things like that, he's become a central member of the Magic community. And I think that his growth as a person and his growth as a Magic player are deserving of attention, in addition to the stats that he has, which are by themselves good enough to get him in the Hall of Fame. Eric Froelich's a slam dunk. He's choice number one. Number two is Willie Edel. Willie Edel is Brazilian Eric Froelich. Everything that Eric has done in the United States, Willie arguably has done more for Brazil. If you've read Paulo Vitor Dama de Rosa's write-up on who he's voting for, you need to go read it because it spells out exactly why you need to be voting for Willie Edel. It's very tough being a Magic player in Brazil compared to a place like the United States where we can drive to PTQs that are maybe 2 hours away. You can't do that in Brazil. It's a lot tougher. And if a Brazilian makes the Pro Tour, Willie Edel personally takes you under his wing to make sure that you have a deck that you test, that all of that goes well. So the two names that are on my list are Willie Edel and Eric Froelich. That's who I would be voting for this year. And to your point about there being too many people in the Hall of Fame, I tend to agree, which sucks because I hate that, because I think that everyone should get in the Hall of Fame if they are good enough. But, right now our bar is 4 Pro Tour top 8s, right? That's the bar, the minimum bar. As time goes on, there's going to be a lot of people with 4 Pro Tour top 8s, and they can't all get in the Hall of Fame. We're already not putting Kyle Rose in the Hall of Fame for God knows what reason, with a Pro Tour win and 4 top 8s and, a team resume that's similar to Huey's and stuff like that. So, if Kyle Rose were a choice, he would be going in the Hall of Fame on my vote. But nobody knows who Kyle Rose is, so it's a little bit of a popularity contest in that sense. But going back to the Hall of Fame voting, Eric Froelich, Willie Edel.
Sure. Aaron, do you have any thoughts on the Hall of Fame as it exists, and who should be in it?
I mean, the two people I would vote for are Willie and Shota. I love Willie Edel, godfather of Jund, Black Green, wonders for Brazilian Magic, family man. I met him in Vegas. He was so sweet and just so gracious, and I think Shota's brilliant. This is tough for me. I've been a really big Saito fan for a while, and I was initially going to vote for him, and it's tricky. It's like, I know people who knew Jared Betcher when everything went down with him, and there comes a point where it's not that you don't believe what you're reading about somebody, but it's really hard to reconcile the two people. So when I see all the good that Saito has done for Japanese Magic, and I see the bruise that he spits up with Saito Wayfinder and all of that, and you put it on a scale, so you put those good things on one side of the scale, but then you put in the stalling, the bribery, slow play at the Super Sunday series. I mean, that takes balls. But it just doesn't even out, and unfortunately that does cause the scale to tip in the other direction, and it's painful. Like, I would love to be able to vote for Saito. I see so much good being done there, but it doesn't outweigh the shenanigans, and that's really tough to reconcile. So I have a really hard time talking about that without feeling very disappointed, and dare I say even a little betrayed. Like, not to sound dramatic, because you want to like the person. Nobody wants to not like somebody. You don't
want to believe in your heroes,
right? You don't want to say screw that guy. Like, no one feels good saying that. Like, it just feels bad to say, or it's like I can't, like, I just can't do it. We talk about bars and having too many people in the Hall of Fame, and with as many people as we have in right now, you can't have that. It's a standard you've got to uphold, and he just doesn't meet that, and then that's unfortunate. So I'm very much on Willie's team, and I love Shota, and I think he's brilliant, and that's really about it.
Sure. I mean, like, you have, like, I think that one of the differences is, at least as I recall it, was Eric Froelich himself was just like, look, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get back in Magic. I'm going to fix these issues that I feel I have with both my public persona and how I've been treating the game and how I've been reacting to the game and the amount of work and effort I put into it. He did it. He succeeded. He's the #1 player in the world right now. And he just crushed it. Like, he's like, I'm going to crush it. I'm going to do well. I'm going to test. I'm going to make this happen. And I'm going to be a positive figure. And like, that's what needs to happen from Saito in terms of, like, saying, like, I'm going to do better. I screwed up. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be a positive influence. I want to go to a lot of events, and I want to be out there as much as I can. And obviously
Ifro never had the cheat cloud,
but he didn't have that. Yeah. So the problem with Saito is not, it was not the same issues, obviously, I think that Eric was dealing with. Saito just has this cloud over him, so he has to fight extra hard to make sure it's not over him. So when he gets the slow play errors, and when you have people saying, like, it was egregious, and you have people saying it was really unsportsmanlike, that's tough, because it sets him back, 2 steps back, not just 1 step back. It would for someone else. It is someone who is already known as this being a problem with them,
and they're personally not showing any growth, or they're not showing any attempt to. Like you said, Eric had the tilting problem or whatever it was, and he made a conscious decision to, I'm not going to do that anymore, that this is something that means so much to me
Right.
that, I may not do it overnight and there may be some hiccups, but this is what I'm determined to do. And unfortunately with Saito, we're not seeing that. There's not like, I'm really trying, you guys, whatever. There's just no repenting there. There's no, and I'm somebody who believes in that. Like if somebody can show over time, like I believe if Betcher comes back in 3 years and I believe in that. Like he may come back in 3 years and be a totally different person, and I'm all for that. But for all the opportunities that Saito has had and to still be here, I just can't. I can't.
Yeah.
Sure. So I was taking a look at Paulo Vitor's write-up where he talks about it. So my current ballot, the ballot that I was coming into this entire conversation with was Eric Froelich, Willie Edel, and wanted to talk about Willie in terms of his impact and long-term, growth on the tour. He's been on the tour for a long time. He's been on the Pro Tour basically for as long as I came back to Magic. And my third was Shota Yasuka. And what Paulo says, I think, kind of just wraps up what I say, is that Shota has a great resume by every single metric except the most important one. Pro Tour top 8s. He only has 2 with a win, and that win is in a team Pro Tour. And I can understand that stops people from voting for him, and I get that. But like everywhere else, he's unbelievable. He has 19 GP top 8s, and he traveled to all the and so he was saying, and what Paulo says is he got them in an era when GPs were hard. It's not like he pulled an Alex Schwartzman and traveled to all the easy tournaments he could. He has a world's top 4 where he went 11-1 against the best in the world. He is a player of the year, online player of the year, and I think I like it from Paulo. It's just Paulo's like, he's just very good. He's just very good. And when you hear someone like Paulo, or someone who has that kind of stature and that reputation in Magic, like that means something. Like they just don't throw that stuff out. I know I'm Mr. Hyperbole and I like things and I get excited about stuff, but they don't. they don't just say that about people, that he is very good or he is very impressive. And because, when Paulo says, I've basically wanted to vote for Shota for a long time because of how much he has impressed me as a player, and parentheses, and I'm not easily impressed. But I could justify it when he didn't have a single individual PT top 8. Now he does.
Now he has one.
Yes, and again, and this was something that happened in the past year. So Shota is a fantastic Magic player. He's also a fantastic dude. I've had some really cool personal interactions with him that just shows what an awesome person he is. So for me, he's an incredible Magic player, and I just wanted to do that. So those are my 3, and I'll officially submit it and whatnot as we move on. So. I wanted to talk real fast about the World Series of Poker and Splash Damage. Ruben, if you could just give us, in Splash Damage, something that happens kind of outside of Magic, but is really kind of related to Magic.
Sure.
You spent last week at the World Series. Tell me how that how Magic players impacted that event.
Absolutely. So the World Series of Poker is the most prestigious trophy. A bracelet or a win at the World Series of Poker is the most prestigious thing that you can achieve as a poker player in the world. And Magic players have been having a huge impact on the poker world for a decade now. Just this past summer, some of the best Magic players in the world had very, very, very good poker finishes. For example, Hall of Famer Gabriel Nassif, often included in the top 3 best Magic players of all time, recently this summer got a second place in a $3K or $3,000 buy-in limit poker event, which earned him $142,000, which gives him over $1 million in career live earnings. I heard several people who are highly respected in the poker community say that Gabriel Nassif is the best player in the world without a World Series of Poker win. That Gabriel Nassif is, and he spends most of his time playing Magic, which is
awesome.
Absolutely insane.
Because it's fun.
Because poker players play poker for a living, and they play Magic for fun.
Yes.
And that's just what they do.
That is literally the exact reason.
Man.
Yes.
And in addition to that, Brock Parker, who has 3 World Series of Poker bracelets, and oh, by the way, a Pro Tour championship, got second place in a $1,500 buy-in event for $84,000. He now has over $3.5 million in live earnings. And what's crazy about that is that I talked to several poker players who say he is the best, basically unknown player, because he only plays like 2 months out of the year. He only plays during the summer. He wakes up for 2 months, crushes a couple events, then hibernates. That's what he does. He just goes back to playing Moto and top 8ing online PTQs.
Oh my
So,
god.
Evan, if I'm looking at the right picture, Evan, you could be this guy's stunt double.
Brock Parker?
Yeah.
I don't know.
They're both
what.
bald, and they both have beards.
Oh, I see how it is.
Bear
Yeah,
type guys.
A little bit.
Sure. I've never.
But I also wanted to say that Ben Yu, who's a Professor Ben on Twitter, he's a regular around the top tables at Grand Prix. He doesn't have a ton of top finishes in Magic, but he's 2 points away from silver, and he'll be going to Grand Prix Dallas. But he's even more respected in poker, and he finally got his first bracelet this summer when he won one of the big events. He won a 10K buy-in limit event for almost $300,000.
Okay, so break this down for me. So when you say 10K buy-in, does that mean they had
spent
to pay
$10,000 to enter the event?
Okay.
And so did everyone else who entered the event. And he won.
Wow.
Lord.
And he got $291,000. And the reason why that event was so special is because Ben took first. Justin Bonomo, a former Magic player, one of the Ship It Ballahallas, if you remember them from back in the day. There's a book written about them, all the Magic players that switched over to poker and started crushing everybody. Justin Bonomo got third. Gabriel Nassif got 7th.
Nice.
Brock Parker got 17th. They crushed that event.
That's awesome.
20% of the final tables were Magic players. Justin Bonomo also had a high finish this summer. He's got over $9 million in live earnings. Eric Froelich, David Williams, Scott Seaver, Alex Borte, the list goes on and on.
Right.
The skills for Magic and poker just cross over, and I think that one of the best quotes about this is from David Williams, who got second in the 2004 main event, says that the biggest correlation is that it teaches the brain how to work. It's problem solving, it's logical deduction. Most people aren't sharpening their brains constantly. Magic players are. We've been honing our skills for years. High-level thinking is pretty much all we do. It's great training for playing poker under pressure. Nice. Magic is basically what I'm saying is Magic's a farm system for poker, and I don't see it ending anytime soon. So I just am super proud of all the folks that I've met playing Magic who've successfully transitioned over to another game that I love, a competitive card game that I love, and I like reporting on both of them. So I had a great time this summer, not just watching very smart people in gladiatorial mental combat, but also seeing some of my friends do pretty well, and I thought that was pretty cool.
That's fantastic. So, and my short little poker story is I got to cube draft with Dave Williams and company at one point, and it's so funny because for me as a dude, family guy, works his job, has his kids, went to Vegas for a work trip, hung out with those guys and played with I brought my cube and we cube drafted with my cube, and like the whole round of the table they were just like $100. $100 on this game? Yeah. And I'm just like, I can't put $100 on a cube draft. I'm sorry.
There are urban legends of there used to be 3v3s that used to take place in one of the apartment buildings here in town called Panorama Towers that were $1,000 3v3s.
Oh yeah. I mean, and you know the worst part was I should have bet that $100.
Yeah,
because I won.
Poker players are starting to pick up Magic now, and they're awful. They're so bad. Like Jesse Sylvia, who got second in the main event 3 years ago, and I were talking about how to cube draft, and I would just like birding a couple of his cube drafts, and he's like, just didn't get it. Right. But he's trying, like Huck Seed has kids, is like teaching his kids. He goes to like the PPTQs around town. He was the world champion of Magic in 1996, and now he's just like showing up to random Saturday tournaments. Nice. It's awesome.
Let me ask you this. So you had mentioned that Magic was sort of a farm for poker players. So do you feel that it's equal? Where like, do you feel that the poker players who are trying Magic, do you feel that they can have the same success as the Magic players going to poker, or do you feel that there's more of a learning curve there or a difficulty?
I think there's a learning curve there's a steeper learning curve going from poker to Magic for a couple of reasons. One, the people who are very, 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 very good at Magic are, in general, I think, more practiced at the game than poker. I think that Magic is a more complicated game and a more difficult game to master. And the second thing is there are so many people who are so bad at poker, and there's so much money in poker that you don't even need to be really that good at poker in order to make a living doing it or be highly touted doing it as much. The bar is a lot lower in terms of what is a successful poker player as opposed to what is a successful Magic player. Sure. So I think that switching over to Magic is a little bit tougher.
Cool. And I could never play poker because I have a terrible poker face. That's me. I'm just like, I draw something, I'm like, oh, crap.
Well, that doesn't help when you're like playing Magic either. When you're like, come on, yes, go.
I can read your poker face.
It's not really...
I can read your poker face, Evan. It's fine. So.
Nice. I saw what you did there. All right, so we're going to move into the finisher. We're going to grow. We're going down the final stretch. We can see the finish line.
See the end here.
Absolutely. So a recent thread on Reddit reported that the average modern deck is now 25% more expensive than it was a year ago. So how expensive will modern decks get? Ruben, kick it off for us.
All right. With the rising prices of Shocklands, Bitcoin dealers are going to move back into Magic the Gathering online digital objects and start to sell out of their fake internet money and instead invest in fake internet cardboard.
Nice. Nice. Aaron?
I've heard that 50 Cent is planning on getting out of his recently announced Chapter 11 bankruptcy by selling his pimped-out Blue-Red Storm deck called the 50 Cent Get Rich or Die Scrying.
Oh, God, because I know that 1 year from now, Greece will exchange their copy of Modern Rug Twin to repay their debt to Germany. Yes, they will.
Fabulous.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that ends another episode of Magic Mics. I want to thank you guys very much for joining us to discuss all things Magic. I want to thank my co-host Aaron Campbell, Ruben Bressler. You guys were awesome. I hope you follow, like, tweet, favorite, subscribe, share, do all the cool social things that tells people that we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmics every Wednesday at 11 o'clock Eastern, on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmics. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com, and follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.